Welcome to the Cardboard Crash Course. My name's Ethan, and today we're going to be looking at the Yin Brotherhood. This is a faction from the Twilight Imperium 4th edition base game, and it's upgraded by both the Prophecy of Kings expansion as well as the Codex, which I'll go ahead and link to print for yourself right in the description. Now this will be both a component overview as well as a bit of a strategy guide towards the end to show you how to use these components in the best way possible at your game table. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep watching these videos as we're trying to hit the 1,000 subscriber goal. Without further ado, let's check it out. Here we have the Yin Brotherhood's faction sheet. This is a faction created by Darian von Howe, an old Soul Federation member. Darian contracted a strange space disease called Greyfire, with an almost 100% chance of being lethal. It ate at his skin and turned him into a gray monstrosity compared to the rest of his humans. When his wife contracted Greyfire and eventually died from it, Darian stole her genes to create a son with his own genes to live on in her name. After about 2 billion of these sons, he created an entire world's population of clones. And when Darian died himself, the clones were left alone to fight for their old father's will and explore the galaxy, pushing that will on all other races. So the Yin Brotherhood starts on the planet known as Darien. Darien is the heart of the Brotherhood's realm, and it is a 4-resource and 4-influence home system. This actually is not bad whatsoever, and we'll get into what that can buy in the analysis portion, really starting on a good foot. They also have starting units, namely 2 carriers, 1 destroyer, 4 fighters, 4 infantry, and a space dock. Notably, there is no PDS, so that might be something you want to look for, but that shouldn't be too difficult, as we'll explain. The Yin Brotherhood also begins with a single generic technology in Sarween tools. This is a yellow technology that says when 1 or more of your units use production, reduce the combined cost of the produced units by 1. This really helps in the early game and will set them up with good tools. Now onto their actual faction abilities. Here they only have 2 commodities, as they don't have too many things to trade away with other races, and they may even seem villainous to some of the races of the galaxy. But they do have a couple of abilities printed on their sheet, starting with Indoctrination. At the start of a ground combat, you may spend 2 influence to replace one of your opponent's infantry with 1 infantry from your reinforcements. This is a way for them to turn the other people into members of the Brotherhood during that, and really get them into their side and genetically modify them to make them one of these creatures. Moving on to Devotion. It says, after each space battle round, you may destroy one of your cruisers or destroyers in the active system to produce 1 hit and assign it to one of your opponent's ships in that system. So normally you can't assign hits directly to your opponents as they choose instead, but this allows you to destroy either a cruiser or a destroyer, which you start with, to produce a specific hit and destroy a ship that you want to destroy. Next up, we have probably one of their most interesting abilities, their flagship. This is the Von Howe. It's an 8-cost, 9x2 combat, 1 movement, and 3 capacity flagship with sustained damage, but that's not what makes it interesting. This says, when this ship is destroyed, destroy all ships in this system. So it's basically like a nuclear blast going off, and sort of a kamikaze way of going out. This, as soon as it's destroyed, wipes everything, yours and your opponent's. So you might want to bring it in somewhere where you don't care about your ships getting blown up. Next we have the Mech, another boots on the ground unit. This is Moyen's Ashes. It has a deploy ability that says when you use your Indoctrination faction ability, you may spend 1 additional influence to replace your opponent's unit with 1 mech instead of 1 infantry. This also has sustained damage, 2 cost, and 6 combat. So that deploy is new to the Prophecy of Kings expansion and allows you to create these in a different way other than paying their 2 cost. So really you can look at this as a 2 influence on the fly ability. Really pretty good. Moving on to their faction technologies. They have a 2 yellow prerequisite technology called Impulse Core. This says, at the start of a space combat, you may destroy one of your cruisers or destroyers in the active system to produce one hit against your opponent's ships. That hit must be assigned by your opponent to one of their non-fighter ships if able. So this is kind of an extension of Devotion, but allows you to immediately blow up one of your opponent's ships of their choice. This is really powerful in the middle of battle, and your Sarween tools is already pushing towards that yellow technology. The other technology of theirs was recently updated by the Codex, which again I will leave in the description. This is a 2-green prerequisite called Yin Spinner. It says, after you produce units, place up to 2 infantry from your reinforcements on any planet you control, or in any space area that contains one or more of your ships. So, for free, after you produce, you can put infantry anywhere. This is insane for placement abilities and buffing up armies before they go into battle. Next, some of the really exciting stuff. We have Brother Mylor, the agent. This, of course, starts unlocked, and it is from the Codex as well. This says, after a player's unit is destroyed, you may exhaust this card to allow that player to place 2 fighters in the destroyed unit system as if it was a ship, or 2 infantry on a planet if it was a ground force. So this basically makes it that you can spawn fighters or infantry after one of your ships blows up, or you can always sell this to a different player and convince them that they need this ability for something in return. Next we have Brother Omar, the commander. This is another one from the Codex, and of course the one printed on the faction sheet, that unlocks by using one of your faction abilities, either Indoctrination or Devotion. When you unlock it, you get the passive ability that says, this card satisfies a green technology prerequisite. When you research a tech owned by another player, you may return one of your infantry to reinforcements to ignore its prerequisites. So not only does this boost your green technologies and allows you to get to the Yin Spinner faster, it also is a complete skip, similar to the Necrovirus. This was a great upgrade for them, and I will talk about this a lot in the analysis portion. Finally, for the leaders, we have Danel of the 10th, another one from the Codex that unlocks when you have 3 scored objectives. This is the hero, and is a powerful once per game ability called Quantum Dissemination. It's an action that allows you to commit up to 3 infantry from your reinforcements to any non-home planets, and resolve invasions on those planets. Players cannot use space cannon against these units. So you don't even have to have any ships flying them in or anything. This essentially makes it so genetic codes of different races from across the galaxy are turning on themselves and allowing you to appear in places you shouldn't. It's an amazing ability and really pretty fun. Another great one that I'll talk about in just a minute. Now they have one last card to their name, Greyfire Mutagen. This is the promissory note, so you give this to another player, and they have the ability, at the start of a ground combat against 2 or more ground forces that are not controlled by the Yin player, replace one of your opponent's infantry with 1 infantry from your reinforcements, then return this card to the Yin player. Basically, this is powering up that Greyfire virus I mentioned earlier, and allowing another player to take a hold of your abilities for a little bit. This is really good because it doesn't let you use it against the Yin player, something a lot of promissory notes don't allow. So, those are all the cards from the Yin Brotherhood. Let's go ahead and discuss what I believe they should be doing and a little bit of strategy about them. Let's head on out. Alright, another exciting faction. I actually love the Yin Brotherhood, and I love how they play. I've seen them mostly played by other people, but I have dabbled a little bit in the Yin Brotherhood myself, so I'll go ahead and discuss how I played them, and how I believe you should as well. Just a quick reminder, we do have a Patreon on the channel, and if you've made it this far, maybe you'll consider pledging. For only $5 a month, you do get all sorts of benefits, such as being able to vote on upcoming videos, see your name at the end of the credits, and right now I do have a giveaway going for Twilight Inscription. This is Fantasy Flight's new roll and write game in the Twilight Imperium universe, and even the lowest tiers of Patreon can join to win that. So the Yin Brotherhood. First of all, go ahead and check out the back of the sheet. Since I've started making these videos, I always read the faction sheet before recording to get into the mindset of the faction. And this one was surprising. Now, it's funny to think about, but this board game I don't believe is PG. This is quite a dark story, and this Darien von Howe is heavily mentioned throughout all of the units and everything across the faction sheet, and it really is quite the story, so check that out. Now, I always think it's best, really, to start with how they start. So you might look at the sheet right away and notice they only have 2 commodities, but I don't think they're very hard off right off the bat. Starting with a 4 resource and 4 influence home system is incredibly powerful because it allows you to create a carrier and a couple of infantry, or allows you to create a couple of destroyers, which they really love, as you'll see in just a moment. And they can really build up however they believe will help against other factions. They also start with 2 C4I, or 2 carriers and 4 infantry. This allows them 2 separate bits of exploration across 2 planet home systems, and sets them up for success early game. And especially with exploration from the Prophecy of Kings expansion, they can really boost themselves up and gain that influence, especially from the industrial and cultural planets, that they'll need to use their indoctrination ability later on. So not only do they get more resources than a lot of other factions, they also get more ways to get more resources. So I don't think they're going to play nice with everybody, but I do think that they're powerful right off the bat. They also, on top of that, start with Sarween Tools. Now, Sarween Tools is of course a card that is beneficial to any race, and the earlier you have it, namely your starting technology, the better. Some races don't fully take advantage of Sarween Tools, however, because the yellow technology prerequisite sort of goes to waste. But do I think it's going to waste here? No, I do not. The Impulse Core is actually a very powerful ability, and it allows you to take advantage of space combats. Unlike their Devotion ability, this only happens once at the beginning of combat. The earlier in combat you do so, the more likely your opponent is to either lose or retreat, because it is exponential gain the stronger and stronger your ships are compared to the opponent's. So a yellow tech path is looking really nice for them. However, what about green? What about the Yin Spinner? This is a 2 green prerequisite technology, which makes it so that it's a little bit far down the line. But do I think it's worth it? Well, most games last for about 5 rounds or so. Now, my friends' games last for upwards of 7 or 8, but that's because a lot of the time we're talking, messing around, whatever. I love the way we play, but essentially in tournaments and other serious games, you're not going to be getting both 2 yellow prerequisites and 2 green prerequisites right away. So I actually think you can skip Yin Spinner unless a specific situation occurs. If you happen to explore planets using that 2C4I as I mentioned earlier, and find a green technology prerequisite in a planet, then Yin Spinner becomes that much more reachable. And if you do have even just 1 green tech prerequisite, then shoot for it. Which reminds me, how about that commander? So the commander unlocks when you use either your indoctrination or devotion abilities. These of course are more forwardly aggressive abilities that sort of make you unfriendly towards the rest of the players. But it doesn't have to be. Paying off somebody to use your indoctrination ability is actually quite worth it. I would even go so far to say as it's worth 2 or 3 trade goods, which is a 4 or 6 times value return for them, but it also makes it so they're less likely to attack you and unlocks that commander for you. And I would say that a green tech prerequisite when you're going for Yin Spinner will make it up in the long run, especially in that round 4 or 5. So if you can unlock your commander early by utilizing one of your neighbors and explore into a green tech prerequisite or get one for free, then I think you're really set up to do that Yin Spinner. But I would say go for Impulse Core before Yin Spinner between the 2. Brother Mylor, of course, got a little bit better in this update. It's intended to use this ability with your faction abilities. The use of Devotion or Impulse Core with this allows you to destroy one of your ships to destroy somebody else's, and also get back a couple of fighters or infantry within that. And if you happen to have used Brother Omar, the commander, to get some sort of fighter or ground force unit upgrade, they might be better in total than even the destroyer or the cruiser that you lost in the first place. These are the kinds of things that I think you should be thinking about as the Yin before you even get into the fight. Do the math, and if it is, then you have that option. And I think the Yin is so good for space combat, especially very particular space combat, because of this ability. Now, I almost consider them to have two separate heroes, and what I mean by that is that they have their hero, but they also have their flagship, which, since the base game, has been flashy enough to kind of be considered a hero. The quantum dissemination is a lot less flashy, but a lot more tactical than a lot of heroes in the game. It allows you to take planets that are unguarded, or swoop in between PDS and fight for planets that you need at the last moment. I don't think you should use this hero at all unless it'll specifically get you a point. Wait for the right time. If something says you need 3 industrial planets or 3 cultural planets or whatever, then use it. And make sure you're stalling to use it before so, because if you're just throwing an infantry or 2 out in the vastness of space, then people will definitely be able to swoop in unless you've stalled them out for it. What's helpful about this hero is it's so wide in its options of where to place them that people generally will not be able to predict unless they've been watching you very closely. This is a very high skill gap hero that I think players will really learn to enjoy the more and more they play Twilight. But talking about their flagship as well, the Van Hao. First of all, there we go, Darien Van Hao coming back. But also, this is kind of a crappy flagship with its 9x2 combat to begin with, but it does have 3 capacity, which I think is very funny. Why would you be bringing 3 people along if you plan to use the ability of this flagship as well? I've seen this flagship completely wipe out Mechatol Rex to allow you to then bring in your cruisers and destroyers and everything else that they're carrying behind the flagship. This might seem very flashy, but again, it does have a high skill cap, because you do have to be able to either warfare or whatever into that system again to claim it in the same round. I would almost say that it's not worth the 8 cost whatsoever, unless you see an opportunity in which the winner or the highest scoring points person at the moment is going to be taken down from it. In that case, definitely use it if it's going to benefit you. But it is going to piss some people off, so be careful. I do like to talk about the strategy cards as well that they like early game. For them, I definitely think that Warfare you can kind of skip. Because of that 2C4I in the first round, you should be able to explore quite enough. And they don't really want to rush for Mechatol, believe it or not. They're kind of similar to Sol in the fact that they focus a lot on ground forces, but not quite as powerful when it comes to actually slamming boots in the ground as quickly as possible. What they can do is, if they're gunning for Mechatol Rex, grab a Warfare late round and then use that flagship and clear it out like I just mentioned earlier. So Warfare you can kind of skip early on. Trade, again, you can sort of skip because you only have that 2 commodity value. If you really want to buy something in particular, like getting your flagship early or such, or even stocking up on cruisers or destroyers to be able to use your devotion ability, then I think that that's worth it. But you shouldn't ever have to spend any sorts of resources on things like your mech because of that deploy ability. So keep the infantry and mechs to a minimum and only use your influence on those. They should really be stocking up on command counters to be able to stall late game with their hero. So in the early game and even mid game, I would say take leadership to be able to stock up on command counters without using your influence to do so. This allows you to be able to use your influence for your faction abilities, but also have command counters to be able to stall late game and use your hero. It's also not a bad idea, if you do start to get those green tech prerequisites, to stock up on space docks and even create a forward dock using construction. This is because the Yin Spinner allows them to create infantry wherever they'd like, and once you have a late game presence with your flagship and all of that, then you should be able to use that Yin Spinner using a forward dock to not only build up close to Mechatol or wherever you're gunning for, but also buff up a couple of places that you'll either be heading to or picking up infantry along the way. This could also allow you to create a forward fleet while at the same time building up your home system to not be gutted from behind. This, of course, is only the Clan of Sarge territory. Boost yourself up on command counters and forward space docks early game, and then come out of nowhere towards the late game and use your tactical advantage to gain more points instead of more enemies. Finally, their Greyfire mutagen, I would say sell as much as possible. People love this ability, and being able to force more infantry on their side is great. And the reason why I love this compared to something such as the Winus or the Nalu's promissory note is because you cannot use it against the Yin. Overall, I do think the Yin Brotherhood is a high skill faction that should be given to more immediate or advanced players, unless they're just looking for some cool theming. All in all, what do you think of the Yin Brotherhood? What do you think of what I was talking about, and what kind of things did I miss in my analysis? Go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I love hearing from all of you guys, and stay tuned for the next faction guide as I do post these weekly. Don't forget to subscribe and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.